friends. Welcome back to another episode of Conservation Stories. This is your host, Tillery Timmons-Sims, with you once again. And I am excited to bring to you a great legend from our area, Miss Jane Deaver. Jane, thank you for joining us so much. I think that your name will be familiar to a lot of people that are listening if they've been in agriculture for any length of time. But I would love for you to give a little background about yourself. And then, as I mentioned earlier before we started recording, I think that people also need to know kind of a little bit about your family and the story of some things that have been really, really neat that's happened in your family. So why don't you start off giving us a little bit of your background?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I grew up on a small cotton, grain, sorghums, wheat farm that my paternal grandfather bought with his earnings from World War I. He came to this country from the Moravian port of the Czechoslovakia, wow. And he was an orphan, and he came over here because his sisters were here, and he was 12 years old in 1908 and joined the Army in World War I, and that's how he got his citizenship. And he took his earnings and came up to the High Plains just east of Abernathy and bought 160 acres, and that's where I grew up with my many brothers and sisters.
So tell us again, what year was that when he came? And so his sisters were already here. Were they already in Abernathy?
One of them was in the Vernon area, mm-hmm. and the other in California. Wow. So it's kind of interesting. He actually came through Galveston and went overland to San Angelo, where there were some friends, his family.
After World War I, that was a long time. I thought you were going to say World War II. I mean, that's what I was anticipating. I was not expecting the one.
You know, people talk about, especially where I am now, this research center in South Carolina where I work is surrounded by families in conservation easements, also with land that was deeded to them by the king. So before the Revolutionary War. And some of this land. So to me, I'm like, I listen about how many generations of farmers. I'm a fifth generation farmer or whatever. I said, it was my paternal grandfather and grandmother that both immigrated to this country, and his story about buying his 160 acres of land. And I found an extension publication once from 1939 that said 480 acres on 160. He was a really great farmer. Oh, and he took advantage of extension. And then 10 years later, they came and visited him again. And this really wonderful stories. And that's, I tell people in a nutshell, my background is big family, small farm. And my mother's side of the family is the Kitten clan from
I didn't know
Southeast Lubbock.
Okay.
She's a Kitten from Southeast Lubbock County. And they've been farming, in the area for a while. And I remembered when I was working for Bayer Crop Science, we came to Lubbock for a field day, and the host came up to me and he said, "Jane, do your relatives still live around Slayton?" And I said, "Well, yes." And he said, "Can you call them?" Because they'd ordered way too much food and didn't have enough people at the field. I said, "No,
that's funny.
I'm not going to call them, but I acknowledge
that I have a lot of family.
We have a lot of
that's
farmers.
Very funny. Oh, wow. That is so, that's one of the things that we've tried to do through the podcast and the website. And we, talk about it's conservation stories, but to us, it's not just the conservation of the ecological system, but it is the conservation of a culture, a way of life. It's the conservation of any type of ecosystem that you can think of. So, our economics here, what can we do to help keep what we have as much, and what can we bring in, and how can we be innovative? So it really is fitting. And I know sometimes I feel like I'm afraid some people look at our episodes and think that they're chaotic, but that running theme through all of them is like making people aware of what is here, what was here, and what can be here. And I think that there's just a lot of value here. And so tell us a little bit about your family, about your parents, and all of these brothers and sisters that you have.
Yes. I don't know. We still occasionally get together for a big family reunion. And one of the favorite parts of it is we go around saying, "How did you join this family?" they didn't really set out to adopt people or intentionally go in the foster system. But I always say that the first kind of extra sister I had, and I have 4 sisters and I had 1 brother, so there were 6 of us originally. There were 6 siblings in my father's family, 6 siblings in my mother's family as well. So that was planned. But at New Deal High School, there weren't too many African-American families, 2 or 3. And back in the 60s, I was in the 1st grade, my parents hosted a birthday party for my oldest sister, and they invited some of their classmates and included one of them. And my parents would say, well, she just came for the birthday party and didn't leave.
Oh my goodness.
And that was Barbara. That was our first.
Oh.
But one of the stories is that when I was a freshman in high school at New Deal, in 1975, at the beginning of the fall, 4 Vietnamese kids, a senior, a junior, a freshman like me, and an 8th grader, came to our class, and I became friends with, I call him now my twin brother, the one that I was the same age as. And one day they weren't coming to school anymore. And I went and asked my mom about it, and she went and checked into it. And they had been in a situation that was not an ideal situation, and were saving their lunch money to try to get out of it and be independent. And they were the 4 oldest children of a family of 8, whose father was a military officer in the South Vietnamese Army. So when the Saigon fell, the mother made the decision to tell the 4 oldest people they had an opportunity with one of the housekeepers that knew an American to get out of the country. And so my dad tells a story that he was out stripping cotton and came home, and he had 4 more kids. Because my mother went to the foster care people, and they said, we can't find anyone that will take all 4 of them. And she said, they've been split up enough. They can come home with me.
Oh my goodness. So what happened to their parents and the younger kids?
10 years. They were here 10 years and got their citizenship, and immediately started working to get their mother and 4 younger siblings here. Their father was killed at the very end of the war, like a lot of the war. But their mother and 4 younger siblings came in 1986. And my immigrant grandfather was just so excited when they came. But the girls, the older girls, were grown, and so they took care of their younger siblings. And one of my favorite stories about the farm is these were, kids that were privileged children of officers, and found themselves on a row crop farm in West Texas and grew up and, but there's the most wonderful story about the youngest one of those early 4. And he built clean rooms for Intel all over the world. He was one of the project managers on the international terminal of DFW. He got his degree in mechanical engineering at Texas Tech. And he now works at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Before that, Southern Medical School. And they did a story on him about how he could, build and manage projects with these incredibly sensitive MRI. And he said, I learned and fell in love with how to do this on a farm east of Abernathy, Texas.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Are your parents still living?
No.
Okay.
My mother passed in 2008, and we had moved back from Memphis in 2003, and my father really didn't want to move from the farm where he grew up. My husband and I didn't have children at the time, and we had the means, and we picked up and moved out back to the farm to stay with my dad, and he passed in 2015.
What a legacy. And so what were you doing while you were here during those years? Were you working on the farm, or were you doing something else?
My dad said he spent money on 2 things, food and education. I didn't have the cutest clothes or haircut, but we were well fed, and education was incredibly important to us. So that was not a question. And I got a degree in textile engineering at Texas Tech because there was a small cotton spinning mill in Abernathy.
Oh, I did. Wait, I did not know that.
There was. It's like an irrigation place now. It's right there on.
Oh my goodness!
It's called Southwest Textiles.
Well, it is too bad it's not there, because let me tell you, I get emails at least once a month for somebody wanting there to be like a meal here. It is unbelievable to me.
This in the Littlefield, I think there's a hat on the shelf behind me that's American Cotton Growers.
I see it.
Which was the denim mill in Littlefield.
Yes.
And this hat was made from naturally colored cotton that my father grew for a lady named Sally Fox.
Sally Fox, yes. I've thought about trying to get her on the podcast too. I remember when all of that came about, that was my grandmother, I remember particular saying, how do they get that? They dye the seed?
That's so interesting.
It's like you get chocolate milk from a brown cow. Yes, that was such an interesting, and the thing that's so interesting to me now is like how the world was just not ready for it at the time and how ready the world is for it now. It's really interesting how things have changed and progressed over the years. And I'm curious about your, I know that you worked in cotton breeding. Before I move on though, let me just say that denim mill that was in Littlefield, my grandmother, she designed a hat, and it was a star, and then it was like the bill, and it buttoned each point of the star buttoned to the bill, and the bill buttoned in the back. And she sold those off her head. She and her sister. She'd go to the denim mill and get pink denim and chambray denim and dark denim, and she sold those off her head for $10 a piece, and she made $10,000 selling those hats. And this was like in the 80s. I don't know. I do not. I mean, I think there's surviving like 3 or 4 of them now. And I've seen them. If anytime I see them mostly they're going to be like in the hill country, because they were living like at Lake LBJ part of the time, and they just wear those in the store, and they just either sell it off their head or she had them in their trunk of her car.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah.
Such an amazing story. But I hate that it's gone, but I know it times have changed. So tell us then if you have this fiber degree.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in cotton in different segments of the cotton industry and seen a lot of changes and a lot of transitions. And I went from, it's a classic story, I had to have a degree in textile engineering and the opportunity to go to Institute in Virginia. And I decided to get married instead. And I'm 42 years later, still very happy with that decision. But so I went to work. It's at that time, I have now in different segments of the industry have found that I have had a real passion about the seed part of it. And it started with working in textiles and hearing how they bought cotton, and how you use different cotton for different products or different qualities for different products. And at that time, before testing, automated testing, and mills would say, well, I'm going to buy this type of cotton from West Texas, or this type of cotton from the Mid-South, or this type of cotton from California. And it was just, if we want to grow good quality cotton, even when we're in West Texas and the environment's a little more challenging, if you want to farm, if it's your choice to farm in different ways, whether it's organic farming or you should be able to have the seed to be able to do what it is you want to do and grow what it is you want to grow. So in a nutshell, spending a career first in the output, end use side of it, and then going into the cotton breeding program at Texas A&M, because Plains Cotton Cooperative Association, PCCA, and their economist named Joel Hembry, they did this analysis about why California cotton got about 13 cents a pound more than West Texas cotton at that time. And this is in the early 80s. And basically it's from the properties of the fiber. So a program called Plains Cotton Improvement Program was put together to do a voluntary 10-cent a bale checkoff specifically for this region, aside from what Cotton Incorporated does to fund the breeding program to improve fiber quality of the seed that we grow in West Texas. And the breeder at the time at A&M, he asked me, do you know anything about fiber quality? And I said, well, yes. And so while I was working in that program, I thought I might as well learn how to do the breeding part of it.
Yes.
So I did a master's and PhD working in breeding. I worked with Norma Trollander. Then I went to work for PCCA.
Okay.
To when they started being able to do the automated bale mixing based on HVI, based on real numbers of the fiber and not just guess of what the fiber quality was based on where it was grown.
Yes.
And I worked in one of my jobs was to try to blend the cotton and buy the cotton for the textile mill in Littlefield. Then I went to work with Norma Trollander. I think she's an amazing, amazing woman. And she worked for the USDA when I was working for A&M, and she decided to leave and do a startup firm to do genetic engineering services in cotton. And she needed some help. So I got that little bit of experience there. And then when my husband was transferred, he worked for Coca-Cola Bottling Company here in Lubbock when they were sold, and it expanded. He was transferred to Memphis, Tennessee. And I went to work for what became Bayer Crop Science, but what was the very beginning of the FiberMax brand.
Okay. Okay. Which is very, I mean, I don't even know what percentage of a lot of folks are using FiberMax. For people that don't grow cotton, that is one of the more popular. One
of their brand points was fiber quality. So it was a good fit for me. And then when I moved to Memphis, we moved back to Lubbock because Bayer consolidated their cottonseed business, global cottonseed business in Lubbock at the time. And when my mother had passed away, so James and I moved to the farm where I grew up, and John Ganaway decided to retire in 2008. And it was an opportunity for me to go back to the public sector for breeding and really follow that passion to say, I want to serve the underserved people. I want to make sure that we have genetic resources of seed for all the ways to farm and all the types of cotton that we might be able to sell. And that's what I did. And I am so excited. And I'm going to tell you, the technology and everything has changed so much in plant breeding. Including in cotton breeding. And it's exciting. It's also daunting. And I tell people, I think it's time to turn this over to someone younger and smarter. And boy, am I happy that they chose Dr. Carol Kelly.
Well, you can't, experience is something that is hard to replace. And I know if you guys are friends, I'm sure she'll be leaning on that experience too. So
we talk by text at least once, at least weekly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'll have to have her on so we can hear about what all she's doing out there at the extension station is where she is. So she's out there north of the airport. Yeah. So that is exciting to hear what's happening there. Out here on the Texas plains, water is everything. And there's a resource that's as vital as it is fragile. Our playa lakes. These lakes are nature's reservoir, catching rainwater to recharge our aquifer and provide lifelines for wildlife. But now they need our help. In collaboration with the Texas Playa Lakes Conservation Initiative and the Cargill Global Water Challenge, Sarah has started the Our Legacy is Tomorrow's Water initiative to inspire and work with landowners to restore and protect our playa lakes. Each playa we save helps secure a sustainable water future for the generations that will be coming after us. Whether it's improving soil health, restoring habitats, or recharging groundwater, we are committed to making a difference. Together, we can build a legacy that we can all be proud of. To learn how you can join in, visit the Playa Lakes Restoration Initiative page on the Sarah website. Let's keep Texas water flowing strong for the future. Visit sarah-conservation.com. When hemp became a thing, we had a farmer or a landowner that came to us and said, I want to grow this. And I'm like, what is it? I don't even know what this is. And I mean, because I grew up in Terry County where we were growing all the wines, but you still couldn't buy alcohol, right? It was a dry county. So I was homeschooled. So I was sheltered, never smelt marijuana until I walked into I didn't even know that hemp smelt like marijuana. But obviously it does because it's the same plant. Anyway, so the first, when I started researching, I went, wait a second, this is a fiber and grain crop? We already grow a fiber and grain crop. Like, this is a fiber and seed crop? What the heck? Why are we not, but the issue for us, you're going to say there's one issue. There's no good genetics for us here, and we've tried several things, and it's there's a lot of problems. There's problems in every part of the value chain of hemp. But anyway, we started a little organization, and with the goal of that converting to a national organization, which it did last year. So we have a board that's made up of commodity farmers. They grow other commodities and they grow hemp. And so I'm excited to see, the potential there, but we need genetics. We need, a lot of these growers, in particular one in Oregon, has been working on genetics themselves, and then with Oregon State. It can't be understated that is so important. But here's the missing piece, Jane. We don't have standards for fiber. So you can see then, like, what you were able to do is you knew the end buyer could tell you what they needed. End buyer can't tell us necessarily what they need. And so it's almost, I keep saying, like, it's like a loop. It's not a chain, because this end and this end, they better be talking to each other.
Oh,
we can't,
absolutely.
so I'm excited that we have one Cotton Incorporated board member that's now on that national board. And she's going to be speaking at, it's actually Lacey Vardaman. So she's going to be speaking actually at the hemp fiber. They're going to have a national fiber meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina next month. And she's going to be speaking because, we've been saying for a long time, I guess the wheel has been invented on what to do here. We have done this with cotton. Everybody wants to keep reinventing the wheel, and so I'm excited, though, that I feel like there's some potential if they don't kill the industry, and the people that are advocating in the industry don't kill the industry before it happens.
And, sometimes figuring out how to grow it is the simplest thing.
Yeah.
And this, you mentioned about the chain, but also the seed.
Yeah, exactly. And
first the seed,
yes,
right?
That's when I guess it took me probably about 2 weeks maybe of research by the time I realized, okay, about every 1 in every 1,000 person that you meet is decent in this industry, and they would say, well, we're going to teach farmers how to farm this. I'm like, but I've been farming it for 40 years. I'm like, you've been illegally growing pot for 40 years. That is not the same thing. We're talking about a fiber crop. You don't even know how to drive a tractor. You're harvesting with a sickle. Like, no.
Well, when I moved out of my office at Texas A&M, that office basically, the Research and Extension Center at Lubbock, north of the airport, had been breeding cotton for about 100 years, and I was the 4th cotton breeder. I called Carol, I just call her number 5. And
wow. Wow. Yes.
And Carol didn't want to move from her office. I mean, she had it nicely decorated with lots of pink. So someone else was going to use that office. So I took to cleaning out 100 years of history. And one of the fun things that I found were proceedings from what they called spinner breeder conferences. So in the cotton industry, back in the 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s, they would have what they call spinner breeder conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Those we kept. It was fun to look at those, find those, and flip through those and say there was communication going on. We've really had a lot of. There is a good model with cotton as far as the chain.
Yes, there is, and I see now just the end buyers wanting. I think that as the chain from cotton has modernized, that connection has been lost between that farmer and that end, and they are wanting that back badly, wanting to communicate, because the standards that people are asking for, they want assurance that they're getting things that are meeting specific standards that are happening globally. They may or may not happen in the United States, but this is a global. We want to sell cotton to a global industry and increase that. And when you can promote a natural fiber, and I see, right now, Cotton Incorporated, the whole cotton industry is really pushing into this. The problem with things that are not cotton, which is that they pollute our environment. They're horribly pollutive. And, so how can we push not only just that this is a natural fiber, but it's also it's helpful to the environment. And that's one of the frustrations I had with hemp from the very beginning was, first of all, misinformation that was often spread about cotton through that, trying to you don't have to do that. It's not the same. It's not the same plant. It's not going to do the same thing, So anyway, I think it's super interesting that you know that history of what's there. I came across a book. It's called Lubbock from Town to City, and it's a collection of different essays or newspaper articles. And there's one that tells kind of the history of cotton breeding and how that first when they first came and they brought those seeds from the deep south, from Mississippi, and the wind blew that fiber right out of the burr, and then one farmer had the sense to say, oh, look, this plant right here, that didn't happen with this one single plant on my field.
I believe that legendary story would be about H.A. Maka.
I wondered who that was.
County.
Yes.
He was one of my grandfather's best friends, also a Czech immigrant.
Really?
The Maka family, yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so was that in Lynn?
I'm trying to remember if it's in Lynn County. They were south of Lubbock around Woodrow.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
all right.
Original.
Yeah.
I've been in Lubbock County. I think it was either Lynn or Lubbock County, but just south of Lubbock.
Such a fascinating story, just the forethought of thinking, this is the disaster, but what can we build out of it? And then there was a fire. The extension station burned at one point, and they lost all of that. Correct? And then if I'm remembering correctly, and he was the one that had that stock, that original stock.
Yes, he had the original plant, and I think that there are some other, maybe parallel, not discoveries, but plant breeding has been the farm. Plant breeders. Yes. Right. For thousands of years. Whenever you go into your field and you pick the seed of the best plant. Right. And in the case of Enoch Maka, it was a Thanksgiving Day storm, I think in 1926 that came. I guess they waited till the freeze, before harvesting and different things. But yes, the storm had blown all the cotton out on the ground, and he found that one plant that had held on to all its cotton. And he planted it the next year. And what made it interesting to me as a more modern breeder or geneticist is he thought, I'm going to plant the seed from this plant, and it's all going to be, tight in the bowl, and it's segregated like a single gene does, like a single gene mutation does. 25% of it was still pretty loose. 25% of it was, hard to get out of the burr. And 50% was heterozygous, and it was just kind of all over the board. And he was like, And he did take some seed to the experiment station. Yes. And then, and how you got it purified. But they sold seed under the Maka brand for a while, and they call it, Stormproof and Storm Master or whatever. But it really, kind of, you make a whole change. You convert to, okay, we're going to start introgressing the genes or the characteristics of this. And people used to really get down on us pretty low about we didn't produce really high quality cotton because we just couldn't do it in this area. And I would go back and say, I would guess that some of those original mutations that carried this trait that we really needed were associated, like so many times in breeding, with not so great fiber quality. And it took years, and it took breeding, and there's certainly we can do it. And I'm going to tell you a story, if you don't mind.
I would love it.
Because here at this Florence, South Carolina, associated with Clemson, we call them research and education centers. We still have a very traditional model when the land grant university system was developed, that there's a big partnership with the USDA, and we still have a couple of USDA scientists co-located here, and one's the cotton breeder. And the cotton breeding program here in Florence, South Carolina has a long history. And I remember as a graduate student, maybe 1986 or so, that thinking my career was completely over, because there was a legendary cotton breeder named Tom Culp who was here at Florence. And he was what we call vertically challenged. By the way, I'm 5'8", and I'm the shortest sister in my family. We're tall. He was really short.
Okay.
And I got up and gave my impassioned presentation and showed research about how it was possible for us to grow good quality cotton on the high plains of Texas. And this man raised his hand and said, I don't know how you can do that. The last time I was in Lubbock, I was standing knee deep in mud and the sand was blowing. And my response was, well, that's not very much mud. And I realized when it came out of my mouth that that was it. And he just bust out laughing. And it was okay. But
oh my gosh, that is so funny. Oh my gosh. That reminds me of the wine industry in Texas. And I mean, like, really, our wine was bad for a long time. And I still have people, I mean, it's been good for the last 25 years. I mean, it's been good wine. And I still have people go, ooh, I had it once. And I'm like, you need to try it again. You need to try it again. And it all has to do with that varietal, and finding, learning that, oh my goodness, like, we can grow what they can grow in Spain. I mean, like, we've got such a great area for growing here. So, and that's something I think I like about it's easy to think that our area is just only cotton, because we do have a lot of cotton, but there are a lot of folks that are diversified as well too. A lot of people, started a lot of peanuts. We started growing peanuts back way back when, in the 90s, early 90s. And, so a lot of, and when you were mentioning that blew out on Thanksgiving Day, I remember that we got a call. We were living in Lamb County, but we were home in Terry County with our family for Thanksgiving. Got a call that every one of our modules on a section had caught fire. Coming home and seeing that smoke from miles and miles and miles away.
From the research side, I've always felt like it's important to serve the major crops of the area, but also to have a balance in the research and always be looking ahead. And I have one scientist here who works on specialty crops. Sometimes they're maybe not going to work.
Right.
But we should but from the research side, not just in the different crops that you should be looking at, while still respecting what the growers are growing, but also the types of growing, the types of research. When people say, oh, organic's not going to work or whatever, I say, from the research side, we need to be prepared because we can have these great advancements. When we had GM herbicide tolerant crops and we could really take care of the weeds. And then nature comes and says, okay, now the weeds are beginning to develop resistance, or we're going to have drift issues as we move to different types of herbicides and all of those things. In the research side, we need to be always a little bit, make sure that we're balanced and looking forward. And we've talked about some of the hemp and some different things. When I was at PCCA and we were selling most of the denim from the mill at Littlefield to Levi Strauss, they came to us and asked about indigo dye, natural indigo. And me and crazy Emerson Tucker, my boss, talk about legendary in the cotton world, we decided to grow some indigo. And then we decided to get dye out of it, which means harvesting that indigo and making it basically rot, which we did in our backyard at PCCA and made everybody mad. But so fast forward to this April, when I went to a meeting, a program meeting, there's something called SARE, Sustainable Agriculture Research,
Mhm.
SARE program. And we were giving we had invited the stakeholders, and we're doing project reviews and what type of priorities they wanted to see. And everybody was engaged. And there was a farmer sitting next to me, actually an African-American farmer. You could tell he was a smallholder, but he was very quiet and he was listening. And toward the end of the meeting, he said, the company that has contacted me and said they will buy all the indigo that I can grow, but I'm not going to grow it because I don't know how to harvest it and some other things. And there was this interest. And I went back to the office and I mentioned it to our Dr. John Park, who's our specialty crops person. And within a week, he had indigo seeds, and we have indigo growing. And
that's extension. That's the power of extension. That's the power of extension. It's that partnership that just, at one time was so invaluable, and I'm so surprised how many people don't know about it anymore, and so I'm super glad that you guys are, doing that and partnering and making things like that possible. Those are the stories that need to be told. Today's episode is brought to you by Evan Stone with Clear Rock Farm and Ranch, part of the Clear Rock Realty Group in Lubbock, Texas. Evan understands West Texas land, agriculture, and what it takes to buy and sell farms and ranches in our unique region. If you're ready to make your next move, trust someone who knows the lay of the land. Visit Evan at clearrockrealty.com, serving Lubbock and the surrounding communities. Clear Rock Farms and Ranch, your partner on the plains. I know that FBRI has done some indigo research. I've seen some of that there as well. And I know that there's just a lot of interest in those type of things, and we interview a young farmer from Plainview who he's been in a grocery store there on the square in Plainview, Frontier Market, and he's doing strawberries and he will tell anybody anything they want to know, and he says, you can make a living doing this, and it's just not something that I think it's never entered my mind that you could make a living doing that around here. Never thought about it.
And even if, like you said, sometimes growing the crop is the least problem. It's, having infrastructure to extract dye or having, the market. But there are still a lot of small artisans. We have here in South Carolina, speaking of extension, a thing called Art and Agriculture, where they do a tour every year. And there's still a lot of artisans that use indigo dye and art in small processes. Yeah. So we're looking at it not only with the potential, can we breed or engineer indigo where it increases its output of the dye, because right now it takes way too much to get the amount of dye you want. That's one aspect, but also from an ornamental standpoint, because indigo is a native plant here in South Carolina.
Really? Oh, yes. Darn. Wow. That's so well. South Carolina's it's a beautiful place. And so what are you in charge of there?
Okay, so just like any land grant university system, Texas has 13 research and extension centers. South Carolina has 6. And one of them in the state legislative mandate, Clemson University is supposed to manage these research and education centers and have at least 2. And one of them's in the PD region. We are in the PD region, the Great PD River. I'm about an hour from Myrtle Beach. And we have 12. We have 18 in Lubbock. 12 faculty members working on everything from plant breeding to molecular breeding to vegetables to soil health to cotton production to entomology. But this is an old institution with a lot of history, and it is a testament to what we've been talking about. Transitions, conservation, and looking ahead, because this station was primarily a tobacco research station.
Oh, sure it was.
And when I came here, they said, we're sorry, we ran out of office space. You no longer have a conference room, but they, off of my office, they built in a porch that our building is actually built over a pond. And they said, but you have this private sunroom. And I was talking to someone on the phone, and I go into that room for privacy sometimes for conversations. And I said, I'm in my sunroom. He said, oh, no, that's the old smoking porch.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
we still have one tobacco plot where we do disease screening, but we've transitioned into vegetable breeding and vegetable pathology, small grains. And so it's a research and extension center that's 2,300 acres, 800 to 900 in crops. We have certified organic land, about 14 acres of certified organic, and the rest of it is forest. And I mean, from a girl from West Texas, first of all, I was scared to drive myself into the forest by myself. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I know. At one point, we thought we might move to Oklahoma after we quit farming. And I told my husband, I was like, I don't know. How will you know when somebody's coming at you? Like, no one's ever come at me. But I'm like, there's too many trees. I can't tell when somebody's going to come get me. Oh, wow. So how do you manage a forest?
Well, I'm learning. So I am the director of this center, which is just, I tell them I'm the space police and keep the lights on, and I'm also the graduate student advisor. But it's just I've enjoyed so many transitions in the cotton industry itself. And this is another transition. I still work with the USDA cotton breeder. I've been working with him for 20 years. Yeah. I have my first research trial out in the field in cotton, but learning about all the crops and stewarding and helping this center, which has been so important to the economy of South Carolina, into its next phase.
Yes.
South Carolina may not be as wealthy as the state of Texas, but agriculture is the number one economic driver in the state of South Carolina. So it makes a different perspective when you're working in agricultural research here.
Well, and it's different in that, they're smaller farms. And so you're talking about, for us, it's like as cotton has less and less value, then, you've got your margins are less and less and less. You're going to take on more acres and more acres and more acres. And now we have folks that are turning back dry land and landlords that can't find farmers for those dry land acres. And, things are changing here as well. And, we're about to interview a couple of young men that they're 18 and they've been watching their dad transition to some regenerative type techniques of farming. And then they've created a Regenerative Texas. And so I'm super excited to see, somebody from, 2 generations that are willing to work together and change is something that is so super unique.
I love that. I love that. I listened to Lacey Barton talk about it, about essentially 4 generations interacting, on the transitions that they're making there. And you have relationships, and there's the president of Mix and Seed. When I met him at one of our field days, I remember him from my days in industry. I tried to sweet talk him into donating some cover crop seed to us and mixed species cover crops. And they are he was very excited about it. He gave me a little discount, but we're really, really, I think on July 21st, we'll be hosting a really nice cover crop field day.
Awesome.
And
that's great. Well, it's a lot different to raise a cover crop there than it is here, but it can be done.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. We had to worry about what time you plant and water availability. Here we have to worry about something getting too big. You can't get your equipment through.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
So wow. It's so amazing to look at the different things you have to consider at different areas in farming. But we're all doing the same thing.
So, which reminds me of a story that you mentioned before we were recording about the bird count there on your place.
When I came as director, I got this unexpected phone call to say, will you still let us on your property to count birds? And I thought, sure. For 55 years, the Audubon Society, in conjunction with Francis Marion University here, has been conducting a bird count in December, and on our property and some of the surrounding properties, which I'm surrounded by properties that are in conservation easement mostly. Okay. Some of them are in families where this land has been deeded to them by the king, prior to Revolutionary War. Wow. And so it's a real different experience in West Texas.
Wow.
But when they sent me, so they sent the report, and we were able to join the bird count if we want. We had sometimes we have up to 65 different species of birds, 1,000 individual birds, and there's a long list. I was looking at it. We had one bald eagle, but there's a long list.
Yeah.
They had all of the birds.
Wow.
But the most interesting thing to me, when he sent me the email with the report, he wrote, "The low and no-till plots are especially productive." And sometime when we're doing research and we're doing these things on plots and we think, well, are we making a difference? And we're measuring the soil health and we're doing all these things and we're saying, is there really a difference? Because we don't see it sometimes in front of our eyes. And for them to notice that that they were seeing different productivity in the bird habitats and the wildlife based on the type of research plots we had here was to me really interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting too for us to think about here. One of the things I think that as a lot of people, some people are going back to grassland to think about, even on the land that maybe there's still row crop farming, like hunting. That's a good way to diversify income, and so if you can, do some things that will help to increase your bird population, even in your row crops, that could increase your income.
We do have, forest specialists. We also have wildlife specialists because it is just amazing the amount of wildlife. It's just right here. It's on our same site. And now we do have some issues with, the deer wanting to eat the beans. And,
yes. Yeah, I can imagine.
And speaking of transitions, when I got here, we had a huge kind of muscadine grape vineyard, because at one time, like I said, you got to try something. You don't know. Some extension folks put in muscadine grapes and thought that maybe muscadine wine was a way for some of the South Carolinas growers to go. There is still one farmer that does muscadine juice, but they decided that was not really what they wanted to do. And the folks that put in the vineyards had since left and not really maintaining them, and they were harboring coyotes and different things. And finally the farm manager said, "Jane, what can we do?" And I was amazed because I said, "Well, these are bushy wild vines." And they said, "We pruned them back to the nubs last year." And that's how fast here something regenerates, right?
Yes.
And so I ran all the traps and asked anyone who might possibly be interested in using that resource, and nobody took me up on it. And I have never seen something be obliterated so fast. When I gave the farm manager the thumbs up, yes, okay, let's take the vines out. Yes. And right now we are planting annual pollinator habitats. Yes. Because the Clemson University apiculture and pollinator coordinator, Ben Powell, he's amazing, offices at our center, and we have perennial pollinator habitats. But where our muscadine grapes are going to be an annual habitat pollinator. And and history marches on. There was probably tobacco there at one time.
Yep. Yes, I'm sure there was. This has been such an interesting conversation. I'm so grateful that you would take the time to get online and talk about the history of all these things. I mean, I know probably half of the people that we reach have not heard about any of this, and some maybe have heard vague tellings of it. So I just appreciate it, and I also appreciate the efforts that you put in for the cotton industry that my family has benefited from for many years.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Of course, it makes me homesick to talk with you.
I bet, because I sound, yes, I bet.
I miss you all. And I get to kind of pop in and look at Sarah podcasts every once in a while. So
good. I'm so glad.
I can see Jeremy or the guys. So,
yes, exactly.
But I can tell you what, that cotton breeding program in Lubbock is in good hands.
That is so great to hear. Well, I'm going to reach out to her so you can warn her. Then I'm coming after her.
Great.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you, friends, for joining us for another episode of Conservation Stories. Conservation Stories is a podcast brought to you by Sarah Sandhill Area Research Association. And we are really thankful that you listen. We hope you find it interesting, and we hope that you will share it with someone. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.